Okay.
No, I'm going to start with Bob.
Okay, you're going to introduce.
I'm just going to introduce it. This is the second part of our demonstration on surface decoration. Brian Rosenkrantz wasn't able to get here today, so he'll probably include his portion later. But what we're going to start today is with Bob, and then after he's done, if there's any time left, you don't need to leave me any if you don't.
Oh, no, this is going to take 10 minutes.
Okay. When he's done, then I'll give a brief demonstration.
I'm not as long-winded as some of us that I've heard about. Good morning, everybody. My portion of the surface decoration demonstration is wood dye and waxing, colored waxes. My first introduction to texturing on turnings came as sort of an accident. This is my first hollow turning. And since I figured I was practicing, I picked a real cracked, lousy piece of wood because I figured I'd blow it up and there would be no great loss there. And it turned out that it didn't blow up, and actually I got a pretty fair form out of it, and being the first one, I decided to keep it. But having so many cracks in it, it just didn't quite look presentable. So to resolve that sort of issue, I took some 60 grit sandpaper, and on the lathe, turning slowly, I just grooved the surface of that with some 60 grit, which sort of takes your focus off of what would be considered otherwise as being a defect in the wood. And there's a little bark inclusion and that sort of thing, but it sort of brought it up just another half a step towards being almost acceptable. And if it wasn't a first turning, I would just put it in the back of the garage instead of up on the shelf. There are more possibilities with texturing your pieces other than just for strictly decorative purposes. If you have a particularly funky piece of wood, you can elaborate on that and give it that worn, weathered look just by texturing, either by that sanding technique, which is not what my demonstration is about, but the next step, which is wire brushing, which gives your surface a bit of texture and dimension. We were first introduced to this sort of dyeing technique. I think Betty Scarpino, for those of you who were here at the time, came and gave a demonstration, and part of her demonstration was coloring wood with a black dye. And she recommended, and it works very well, this Master Beelan Solar Lux. And the Woodcraft is a, I will pass this around, but it's a Beelan product. It's called Master Solar Lux. And it is not translucent. It's solid color once you dye your wood. Now, most people would say, well, why don't you just paint it? And it's like, yes, that's a possibility. You could paint this, but with the paint, you run the possibility that on a porous wood like this, you're going to fill the pores with your paint, which you don't want to do. So what this allows you to do is to color the wood without filling anything. And then this is a wax product, so I'll pass that around as well. Be careful, yes.
Alcohol-based.
That's alcohol-based. It's made for wood. There are other dyes that are used for cloth that could be used for wood as well.
So it doesn't raise the grain.
Correct. That's a nice feature of the alcohol base. I'll pass this around on the other side. Does it taste good? I don't know. This is a porous wood. You can use, I've used red oak, white oak, or ash is another good porous wood. Any porous wood is going to have those open pores like that, and you get that nice pattern that comes out with the waxing technique.
The wood is prepared, sanded, then the dye is put on,
That's the process.
and then after the dye, you put a finish on top of it.
I'm getting to that. You're getting way, way ahead of me. But those are all good questions. It's very important. The first step after this is turned is to sand it to, I may go 180, 220. And the surface has really got to be perfect because you're bringing a lot of attention to the surface once you dye it and wax it. No, this is preparing the blank piece of wood. Let's turn it up. Come on, sit up here. Sit up here where I can reach you. Okay, so we're sanding the piece to up to 220 grit. So the surface has really got to be baby butt smooth. No tear outs allowed. So again, when we carve wood or we texture wood, the thought process goes to, well, we don't have to be as fussy because we're going to carve it away. Well, all of those areas that are lacking material are going to be the first thing that the eye goes to when you carve or texture a piece of wood. So the wood has to be almost perfect, otherwise you're going to see that. So the wood up to 220 grit is then dyed, okay? This is nasty dye. You want to wear gloves, and I tried the latex and I don't really like them, and some people are allergic to latex. These are nitrile, Home Depot, nitrile. Is that the correct pronunciation? Who cares? Excellent, beautiful, yeah. But these actually, and I think Betty pointed out that you could reuse them if you wanted to, if you take them off carefully, if you want to be that frugal about it. But this dye will get on everything. And it'll take a couple of weeks for it to wear off your fingertips. So a great idea to protect yourself. You don't want to wear a nice white shirt when you're using black dye, okay? So, you know, wear your nasty clothes. And one good thing that she pointed out as well during her demonstration was that she pours a little bit of that dye in a little cup. Because as you're, you know, doing this and you're moving along and you do this, and that goes everywhere, you're going to be living with that for a long time. So a little bit of planning goes a long way. Once the dye is applied, it's alcohol-based, dries pretty quickly. A couple hours would be a good thing. If it needs a recoating, that's a good time to do it. You can tell if there's some surfaces on here, particularly the end grain, where it's absorbed quite a bit more, give it a second coat. And once that's all done and dry for a couple of hours, then you can clear coat it. And I just use a spray lacquer. It doesn't raise the grain. You don't have to touch. You don't want to, because again, this is only on the surface. The dye is on the surface. Any sanding at that point in time, you're going to sand through that surface. And then you've got to go through that whole process again. And you also have to be careful once you clear coat it that in applying the wax, which is applied with just I use a cloth rag because the paper towels sort of deteriorate too rapidly. The wax is rubbed in all along the surface and then burnished with some triple aught steel wool to get it off the surface. And what remains is in the pores of the wood if you're using a porous wood. And that's what gives it, you know, that's what highlights that grain. And then that's the end of the process. That is done after that. No, it's clear coated after the dye and then waxed. Because again, a wax surface, you don't want to put a finish over that because it's only going to be on part of it and it's not going to stick. Again, woods like any porous woods, like ash, red oak, white oak, will work nicely. And again, I'll pass this around. Mulberry? Look, you can try anything. I mean, that's the beauty in being introduced to a new technique is that this is something that you need to put in your arsenal of tools. And when you get a wood that you think is something that you'd like to play with, take a scrap piece of that wood and experiment with it. And I found that I experiment with something and then I come up with something else, you know, that's even a little bit different. I'll pass this around because this represents two different colors of this wax. Now, Betty had recommended liming wax, and that was, she ended with that. This is a white pigment wax, and it was like, white, it's kind of limiting. And being, my wife being a crafty person, had access to what is available in most craft stores. It's called rub and buff. And anybody that's, we have any crafters in the audience, rub and buff is something you've probably seen. I'll, again, pass that around. Rub and Buff is one of them. I went to another craft store and found another metallic finishing wax. Okay, same deal, different colors. This is copper. I've used gold and silver, and I did a blue dye on a lamp base that was in the last show. Unfortunately, it sold. Well, fortunately, it sold, and I didn't get to show it off. So I did it in blue with a black, sort of a mottled dye over that.
Are you mixing that with the lining wax?
No, liming wax is not on any of the pieces that are in this demonstration.
You're not coloring the lining wax, you're just using
No. I'm not, again, too much trouble. If I can buy a wax for a couple of dollars, I'm going to buy that rather than try to put a pigment in it and go through that process. Shoe polish, Marty brought up for that because Marty's a very thrifty fellow. If you don't know Marty. And shoe wax, I mean, it's so inexpensive. These are a little pricey, but, you know, a little goes a long way. Herbert? Were you raising your hand? You're being...
I want to get a higher sheen.
A higher sheen? A little more buffing. Yeah. Again, out of necessity, because this is nice, but it's, again, it's just one technique. Out of necessity, I turned the lamp base out of Dade County pine, and I have the wood lampshade that goes along with it. And the two woods, being blonde or honey-colored wood, just there was not enough contrast to it. And I had some cracking in the base of it. And again, it just didn't. It looked like a cracked piece of wood. So I figured, what am I going to do? So I took a wire brush, and this wire brushing technique was with the piece turning on the lathe very slowly and taking just a hand wire brush to it. And with such a soft wood, two things happen. You get the striations from the brush, and being a soft wood, you'll get the softer wood between the growth rings that starts to go away. So you almost get a sandblasted effect. If you've seen sandblasted work, you know what I'm talking about, where you've got high and low spots in the wood because the softer wood wears away and the harder wood of that growth ring stays behind. And almost the same thing happens here. And again, it just didn't look quite right, so I took that black dye to it, and it doesn't look, I mean, for some reason, because it's such a resiny wood, it didn't take a complete dark, solid color, and there's a little bit of redness in that, so I guess I can pass that around as well. So it turned a piece that was, again, not quite up to snuff into something that's more of a weathered look, and it kind of saved it from that point of view, and it contrasts nicely with the wood lampshade. So again, out of necessity, tried a technique that it wasn't meant to be for decoration, but it sure hides a lot and enhances some of the otherwise considered defects in the wood.
Did you sand this a little bit after the wire rub?
Yes, I did. Again, sometimes on a softer wood, and different woods are going to respond differently to the technique. So a very fine sandpaper, just to knock those sharp edges off. And again, if you leave the sharp edges on, if you dye it and they get rubbed away after the fact, then you're going to see light spots.
Bob, was the shade Dade County pine also?
The shade was Norfolk Island pine, but they're so close in color in terms of that honey tone that there was not enough contrast between the two. The lampshade, yes. So that's where the focus wants to be. If you stain something or dye something black, it almost becomes neutral territory so that the eye is focusing simply on the form rather than the wood.
But it keeps the light from going through, right?
You're talking about the lampshade. Yeah. The lampshade was left regular wood. Just the base was dyed for that contrast.
Wood that you're using this time, does it matter if it's green or if it's been aged and salted? Is there
I wouldn't recommend again, I would recommend dry woods because, you know, it's going to soak in more readily. If the wood is green when you turn it, just put it to the side, let it dry. Yeah, I've never tried dyeing green wood, but I don't think it's going to work all that good. Again, you've got moisture in those cells, and that's not going to allow that dye to completely penetrate. And you, again, even with the alcohol-based, you may, if you put a finish over all of that, you may raise the grain on that green wood as well. So you want it sanded dry, and yeah, sure, you'll get a better result. I wanted to try wire brushing on this piece of oak, and I got a totally different result than I figured I would, because these are oaks, and these are not wire brushed. But I thought I would get, a wire brush pattern with this. And what I did again was just taking, this, and these are any hardware store you can get these wire brushes, very cheap, $3 or $4. So I just, with the lathe turned off, figured, okay, that some of the pores and the soft tissue around the grain will get worn away. And because I did try it with it in motion, and I got just almost like what you'd get with the sandpaper, just very fine rings, because the wood is so hard. And you're really not cutting the wood with the wire brush. You're sort of wearing it away. So I kind of stopped so that you could see the difference, because one side of this has not been touched. It's just sanded smooth. And the other portion of it, and you'll be able to tell the difference just by feeling it, almost a leathery texture to it. Now, it could sit by itself just with that application with a clear finish on it, but it's not a particularly great piece of wood in terms of coloring. So I'm probably going to dye this black, because that will allow that form to prevail, and then maybe with a copper wax brush that in, and I'll bring the piece in when I'm done with it. But I wanted you to see the piece of wood first, so that you can get an idea of what it looks like before wire brushing, what it feels like after wire brushing, and then once it's dyed and waxed, then you'll see a finished product. This sort of piece is a piece. This is a side grain piece, and it's got a little dip right in here of the grain, and that will be carved away so that the top of this will be shaped. Right now, the next step is to get this meat off of here and wire brush the rest of it. So this will go back on the lathe in a jam chuck to turn the rest of that away, wire brush it, and then it'll be ready for the dyeing process. All directions. All I want to do is I want to wear that grain away, and you won't see any wire marks, like you would sandpaper if you sanded it in the wrong direction. And I'm not getting any of that. So I'm just sort of brushing it. I try to go sort of in the direction of the grain. If the grain is curling around, I'm trying to follow that as best I can, but I'm not being all that fussy with it.
You tried the wire brush with the drill?
Yes. And you had a question, Gerhard? Sorry? Okay. Yeah. Brass, wire brush, and I've used the wire brush where I may want to wire brush a little more aggressively, and you got to be careful, because you can actually dig out areas and distort the form if you're not careful in one area, not the other. And once you color that's going to really jump out at you. And I think on this, if you're turning the piece just ever so slowly, you can get that sort of wire brushed finish to it as well, depending on the wood. A softer wood like this lamp base that's going around will probably give you that sort of result. So all kinds of possibilities.
I found sometimes it's a little easier to put the chuck in the lathe and add the
Yes,
wire brush to it and hold the piece
you could do that.
like this, and wire brush. Because otherwise, if you hold the drill with the wire brush in it, it wants to.
It can jump on you. again, the piece, if you're doing it with the piece turning, you want to be going in the opposite direction of what the wheel is turning. Otherwise, it's going to jump even more on you. It's a little more difficult to control, you're right, in certain areas, and you've got to be careful towards the rim area where it can jump off and sort of round out an area where you may not want to round it out. So, no, I haven't. Yeah, okay, yeah, I know what you mean. I haven't tried it, but again, being introduced to a new idea opens yourself up to all kinds of possibilities. Because I start out something thinking, okay, this is the result I want. I sometimes end up with something that's either a lot worse or a lot better, not necessarily what I'm going for. And that's a way to discover. It's a great way to discover, just by trying it.
It seems like the wire brush has taken much more effect on, is that the wave that you're getting where the wire effect is much greater? Did you specifically try to do that, or is that just the way the width of the...
That's a softwood. So it's being a softwood, a pine, it's going to wear away a lot quicker than the hardwoods. So where the early wood and what's called early wood, late wood in the growth ring, the softer early wood goes away a lot quicker. The harder late wood, which is more dense, polishes up. And depending on the pine or the material you select, you'll get a different effect. And try anything, but don't try it on the piece that's finished. Have a scrap piece of whatever it is if you want to experiment and see what happens and try.
When you actually get started on it, you're really not going to know what's going to be after you've...
Exactly. I mean, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, we started out being introduced to dye with this, and that got old real quick because it's sort of two-dimensional and somewhat uninteresting depending on the form. It works on this form because I think it's, it's very simple. But now we've got another alternative to brush it and dye it and wax it if you wanted to. If it waxed that, I'm not sure what the result would be, but I thought it sat okay just by itself. But now we can wax that and get a totally different result. So you got many options. So with this other oak piece that's going around, this one that has not been dyed, that could live quite nicely without any dye work. Some people might go, oh, you're going to color a beautiful piece of wood? And it's all in the eye of the beholder. But you've got options. So you can, and it doesn't have to be dyed black, but my choice would be black because of the form. It's a sort of I don't know, I would call that a southwestern type form.
Have you ever experimented with any lighter colors? That all the colors seem to be much...
I did the blue, the lighter blue, with that blue metallic, and then the blue didn't quite work just by itself, so I overlaid it with the black, and that didn't work. And then my wife came up with the idea, well, take a straw, and blow on it, wipe it on, blow on it, and you'll get, just areas that want to stick, and the rest will blow away. Well, I wasn't going to take this huge piece and blow on it. So I took my air hose, okay, put it on outside, because it's going to go everywhere, and I hit it with the black over the blue, and some of that black got driven into the cracks of the wood, and some of it laid on the surface, and came up with a totally different look. And it was like, Then I did the wax, the blue wax over that, and gosh, it was like, wow. I got a great result, I thought. And it was a lamp base with a hole. It looked like an ancient wagon wheel, and it was a lamp base. And it didn't last long. Now, the last thought is that light is very important because there are certain things that you can't necessarily see as you're working it. And once these, if you have a defect in there and it appears after the fact, you've got to go back to zero. You can't just do a little area and correct that area. So if you've already dyed it and clear coated it and then ready to wax it, and you figure out I've got a little defect, you've got to now take that clear coat all off. You've got to sand that down and then re-dye the whole thing, because you're going to see that one little spot. And if you look on this little spot, this little one, there's a nice white area here. That's from the steel wooling. I actually steel wooled it to the point that it went through the clear finish and into the black. So now this is going to be completely redone in order to correct that. And that's you just need to be careful with how aggressive you get with it.
How did this come out of the log? This is the log this way? Or
The pith is what you're looking at right now. So it's a very oval, it probably was a branch. So it's a very oval piece of wood, and that just, 2 and 2 is 4. I decided that would be an ideal shape for that oval branch piece. Now what's going to happen is when I wax that, is that all of those rays that are coming from the center are going to appear, because that's what's getting worn. The rays, that part of the wood is getting brushed away, so that's actually taken away the material where the rays are. The ray material is a little less dense than the wood, so it's creating that starburst pattern now. Nature's carving in one way, and that will coincide with the cracking, which is also emanating from the center. So once it's colored and waxed, that becomes part of the pattern, the natural pattern of the piece, which is what I'm trying to get to. You won't see that if I just clear coat it as much. But I don't like to fill cracks like that. I like to, if there's a sharpness to them, I'll wire brush that area a little bit more so that it looks, again, weathered and worn and ancient. And that's what I'm trying to take advantage of. If I try to fill that, you're always going to see it. It's just, and then I fill other areas around it, and that doesn't work for me anyway.
Have you tried dyeing something, letting it go into the softwood and then sanding? Does that work?
Sure. Chris Stott's video, I think he uses a translucent type dye and several dyes over and over and over. If you haven't seen Chris Stott's video, this is not, a solid color dye is only the beginning. There's translucent dyes, there's all kinds of color tints that you can utilize, transparent, color over color over color, all sorts of possibilities. John will talk about some books that he's just recommended for purchase and ideas. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. And I'm not a big person on coloring wood. I love the look of natural pieces of wood. But there are some woods, and where you've invested time into a piece, and it's just not quite what you need. And then you go to your arsenal of tools, whether it's carving or brushing, wire brushing or dyeing or coloring, and you figure out what it is you can do to enhance that piece rather than toss it to the side.
Bob, I believe Mr. Nettles over there has the book is brought in, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's going around, I think. Yeah, there's a book that thank you, John, that I spotted at the Georgia Symposium, and I had to, gosh, it hurt only for a little bit. It was $75, but it's a book by a German couple that have visited several wood turning galleries and shops, shop studios, I should say. And it's amazing. You look at this work, and the turnings are so simple, but the fact that they've been sandblasted or carved or manipulated in some way turns a very simple turning into truly a good piece of art. And that's really where we're going with the surface decoration, because there's that long-standing argument about, well, is it craft or is it art? And a simple turning is a success in terms of being a craft. We're taking it now one step. I mean, the wood turning world seems to be going in that direction. If you attend any of these symposiums and galleries, you'll see all kinds of manipulation going on. And it really is an opportunity to make a simple piece into something that's individual and an expression of what interests you. And you may see, or you may be inspired by something in nature. I've got a palm tree in the yard that has a texture on it that's like, boy, I'd love to duplicate that. So it's the things around you that you can use and try to apply to your work that'll make it individual and more artistic and something that really comes from the heart. And that book is called Passion, and that's what it's about. It's your passion for taking that next step. So when you get bored with making bowls and vases and just bowls and vases, there's a whole nother world of decoration that it's limited only by your capability of exposing yourself to this sort of thing. And if there's no other questions, I'll turn it back to John.
Thank you very much. Will you remove some of your stuff here,
Yeah.
because I'm going to make a little... Bob got his stuff out of the way, and in the meantime, I was going to talk about another technique. A little better? All right. One of the techniques, and I know that Carl talked about this last week, but I had brought in a piece that I think demonstrates the technique, and that is hammer finish. Now, he used a small reciprocating carver that was attached to a flex shaft, and those tools are pretty new. They've been around, 10 or 15 years at the most. It's a regular flex shaft like a Fordham or a couple of the others. Even a Dremel has now a flex shaft that has a reciprocating head. I'm having trouble with feedback. I don't know why. It just bothered me up here. Am I still? Okay. Now it's better for me. So what I did was obtain one of these Ryobi cutters. This is a reciprocating chisel. Ryobi made these for several years. I don't know why they stopped. I guess they couldn't sell them, but these are available on the auction sites like eBay and the like. These go for 40 or 50 bucks now, and this was like a $70 tool when it was new, and everybody likes them. It's pretty strong. I don't do enough of it to wear them out, but people that tell me they wear them out, that it's still worth the price. Reciprocating tools that have been involved previously, the ones that were air powered or even the ones that were on the flex shafts, were very expensive in the past. So you now can get them in the $25 to $40 range on the flex shaft, and then these, as I said, are available. All you do with this is sharpen up or dull up a nail, however you want to look at it. And I thought I brought it in here, but I don't see it now. It's just, maybe this is it. It's just a rounded nail. Normally this holds blades like these. They came with it with the Ryobi. And you can also buy the flex shaft tools in the same format. They have this, flex shafts have the same format and will fit in this cutter, and they're much better steel and they sharpen up better, but they're very expensive. A set like this for flex shafts about 125 bucks or something, and these came with I think I got 5 of them with the set, and then there was an extra add-on set later. But all you do with this is, while this is bouncing, it's got the best thing I can call it would be like a smash plate or something. Instead of going just rotary, there's a plate that's on an angle that turns. Eccentric. So as the offset plate turns, this bounces up and down against the offset plate. And it only bounces when you're actually cutting. So when you have a cutter in there and you just push along, then it starts vibrating. Has 2 speeds. I've never found that it makes much difference. Depends, I guess, on the hardness of the wood and the like, what speed you want to use. But all I did on this piece, this was dyed black with leather dye. Was that the kind of dye you'd use? Yeah. The nice thing about leather dye was it was very inexpensive. You can buy like a pint of this for about $15 or $16. It's not a real expensive dye, and you can reuse it. All you do is pour in a little bowl, run it around in it, and pour the rest back in the bottle. And I got this technique from John Jordan, and this is just got this leathery finish on it. This is a mahogany vase. I thought it looked very good before, but now I think it's outstanding. I don't want to throw this underhanded, but defaced a piece of mahogany. But I also want to tell you that one piece that we had Phil Brennian turn while he was here, I then textured that piece using a burning tool and finished it, and Al Gruntwagon bought it. So he's got a piece. He doesn't like texturing, right? Doesn't like dyeing or painting, but that piece, it made a big difference. The texturing was used to cover the softwood portion of this mahogany piece. I did the texturing on it, but that softwood portion just didn't look right. It was a little bit rougher, didn't have quite as much show as the smooth mahogany portion. And by texturing and burning, I used a burning surface, the kind of technique that Carl had showed last month, to texture it, and the piece looks really good. It's essentially a small vase, the southwestern style, and then the saddle-shaped heartwood around that piece, just like you can see come out frequently. That saddle portion was textured, and it really came out well.
John,
Yeah.
did you texture it before you dyed it or after?
No, I dyed it first. In fact, here's what that process is. I was going to explain what the process is. First of all, it's turned completely. So everything was done, sanded, completely finished, except there was no finish on it. All right, then, so it's clean, and it's got to be clean, and I got to get the shape just right. Then I dyed it, and I dyed it just over a bucket. I'm going to show you how I do something like that, but just dyed it over a bucket, poured the dye back into the bottle, and then I sprayed it with a lacquer. It's got a clear lacquer on it that was not high gloss, sort of a matte finish lacquer. That allows this tool to bounce and slide better, so it doesn't get stuck in the wood. So that's done over the lacquer. Now it's just a very fine coat of it, but that way it slides better over the wood, and you get, because sometimes the bouncing tool will hang up on a grain or a slice, and you get a row of them that might look out of place. But by getting it a little bit slick with the lacquer, it slides over better.
Does the lacquer get broken?
Yeah, yes, but not very much. The lacquer got broken a little bit, not very bad, and you'll see that. And then over that, I did a little bit of sanding, but not much, and then I put some more lacquer on top of it. So, but it really didn't crack very much. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, that's another piece. You can bring him in to show him, because I did. I'm sorry.
Isn't lacquer the type of finish where a subsequent coat can dissolve?
It dissolves exactly. It dissolves the cracks. It welds itself together. Most lacquers do that. It's one reason why lacquer is such a nice finish. One reason it's not is it reacts to your skin, alcohol, water, anything else that touches it. Sometimes lacquer can react badly. So. Well, this was not, yeah, you're right. Water-based lacquer sometimes, there's a disadvantage to water-based lacquer too, as far as the quality of finish you get and the like, but in some ways it has some real advantages. That's true. I don't know. I haven't used much water-based lacquer, and I know that we're going to all be using more of it in the future because of the way the hazardous materials requirements are. But as I said, they're getting better. Manufacturers are getting better and better at that. So there really are some very high quality lacquers. Anyway, like I said, that reciprocating technique was taught to me by John Jordan. I spent some time with him at Arrowmont, and I mentioned this to Bob. Bob asked me the question about it. He uses a wire brush technique, and he uses round wire brushes like Bob had, and it's essentially the same thing, but he uses steel, and the ones made out of steel. I believe they're stainless steel, but I'm not sure. He described them as being very expensive. He uses wheels that are 6 or 7 inches in diameter, and he doesn't buy cheap ones, he says, and then he sharpens them. And he sharpens that wheel by holding it, the the round wheel perpendicular to the grinder and running it around this way so that all of the wires get corners knocked off. Then when he's cutting, it's fresh, so he gets a more aggressive cut. And if you've ever seen John Jordan work or seen any of his videos, he says sharpening should be your attitude as opposed to some view that, it's a chore. And he sharpens tools more often than anyone I've seen. But even sharpening the wire wheel, he says, makes a big difference in how well it cuts. And he uses a pretty hard wheel, but then sharpens it so that, and then each time he does it, runs it through again. And he says they last a long time because you just keep sharpening, keep raising a burr on that wire. Any other questions on that piece? I don't know where it is now. Has it gone around a little bit? Yeah. Any questions on that technique? I've got another technique that, I'm sorry, yeah.
Just to finish up, you've got clear lacquer on it, and then you put the dye.
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Put the dye on first. Dye is on first, and it's a mess. Okay, I wear these kind of funny rubber gloves, and I've got the nitrile type, and I've got some other type that's not vinyl too. They come in different kinds, but this is what I use for the dye because it's easier they're easy to get off and on. Then lacquered and then hammered, okay? And you can dye it some more then, by the way. But I want for that piece, I want the dye down in the holes. All right. So there was some touch up later to the dye, but the dye it really does blend. This dye, and of course it's black in the first place, so there's not going to be any kind of, or very little margin between one area and the other. But that, like I said, that's pretty quick. It's not that long a process. Even the bouncing technique on there, it really didn't take that long. You sit down and just run over this with the piece, and you're just bouncing at random. You saw the surface. It's really, it doesn't have. There shouldn't be much organization in it or anything, and you'll see how loose that is. Yes.
What is the advantage of dyeing before hammering it rather than
I don't know.
Try it both ways?
No.
Well, he said the idea is to put the lacquer on so that the hammering slides easier
Yeah.
and moves easier instead of concentrating on one spot and making too deep a hole. So, you dye
Yeah.
the lacquer then hammer.
Yeah, the lacquer, though, is what smooths it. The dye doesn't matter. I mean, the dye really doesn't make a textural difference. I'm sorry, what?
You cannot dye over lacquer. Not very
Well, you can, but it won't go, it sets on, in fact, there are all sorts of processes. One very good process is to use lacquer over wood, then put dye on top of it, then lacquer some more, and dye on top of that, and lacquer some more, and you can get layers in there that soak in differently and that stand on the surface as opposed to soaking in. It's a completely different look and a completely different kind of technique than this. This is intended to get as even a finish as possible. So what you look at that when you see it is just the form of the piece. Yes?
When you hammer, you clean the dye is only on the surface.
Right.
When you hammer, you sometimes get below it.
Yes, sometimes, as I said, afterward I touched it up with that. I touched it up afterward, but not too much. It held up pretty well.
I'm just thinking that alcohol attacks a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if you use an alcohol-based dye on top of the lacquer finish, it does go through it.
It goes right through it, and then you put more lacquer on it, and it melds in with the lacquer. This dye, it's shoe dye, must be alcohol-based. I believe it's alcohol. It's water and alcohol is what's used on leather. As I recall, it has an alcohol smell to it a little bit. I've never drank any of it, so I can't tell you what exactly the taste is, but it has sort of a medicine-y taste.
How long does that leather dye take to dry?
Not long at all. That's why I believe it's one reason I believe it's alcohol, because the alcohol evaporates very rapidly. And usually the reason for mixing dyes with alcohol is soaks in fast and then dries fast. And alcohol evaporates very quick. But I don't think it's not a concentrate alcohol. It's going to be a standard, over-the-counter type standard, alcohol, which is mostly water. Medically, they use high percentage alcohol solutions. But typically, what you buy, I don't know, I can't remember it. Maybe it's like 50 proof or something. I don't know. But 25% or whatever alcohol, 75 water, something like that. I don't know. Yeah, but even then, yeah, exactly. Exactly, and you can dye all the wood you want with that too. That's another thing, Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about alcohol? Yeah, and I know Bob covered a little bit of this, but there are essentially, dyes that are oil-based and dyes that are water-based. And the ones that are water-based, they really call alcohol-based. All right? And, they do have very different characteristics, and they go over different surfaces. And you've got to look at the directions and study up that issue a little bit based on what you're putting on there. Dave? Of course. All right. Okay. All right.
But when I look at a turning,
Yeah.
I want to see wood grain. If you hide the wood grain, you might as well have a piece of clay, the clay made from porcelain or whatever. And you'll notice that when you see displays that are made, people will walk by the clay and they look. But when they walk by a wood turning, they pick it up. There's something about grain that pulls you in. Not just me, but I mean generally people. And I hate to completely hide the grain. I'm sorry.
Well, no, mine did. The piece I'm passing around.
Yeah, you can't know it's wood.
I'm good. Yeah. Yes. Let me repeat Dave's point is that a lot of this texturing, a lot of this texturing does conceal the wood completely, so you really can't tell the pieces are wood. And there's no question that we're talking about a different kind of wood turning when you're talking. Yeah, that's one reason to wire brush them. But again, as Bob mentioned, and we discussed last month as well, if you go to these galleries and you look at what's on display in wood turning galleries, has anybody, by the way, how many people have got to go to Coral Springs? Yeah, okay, good. And I'm sure, I haven't been there, but I'm sure you'll see a lot of pieces that have surface decoration as a part of their finish. And definitely, if you go to the AAW Instant Gallery, you're going to see the vast majority of pieces that are in the instant galleries now have some sort of surface decoration or enhancement of some kind other than just polishing and finishing wood. There are, in addition to the new book that Bob found, and we're going to try to acquire that for the library if we can get a reasonable price on it. I brought 3 books that I have on, and these are also in the library. These are my copies here. The first one is Decorating Turned Wood, and it's by Mick O'Donnell and his wife. And I got this when I went to a course with him in Arrowmont. And this shows a lot of his techniques. And this is available in the library, and I'll pass that around if Al will come up and get that. Another book, curiously called Decorating Techniques for Woodturners. I know that neither Al nor Dave would buy this book, but it's in the library. And this is by Hilary Bowen. And this is really a good book. This has a lot more different kinds of techniques than the ones that Mick O'Donnell is using. He describes a variety, but this book has many different ones. And then Jan Sanders' book called Coloring Techniques for Woodturners is a really good book and is much more oriented towards dyeing and painting than other kinds of surface decorations as well. But we've got these 3 books in the library, and we'll pass these around so you can, here, we'll take this one this way and this one this way.
In other words, what are the chances of breaking the wood?
Well, I'm sure you can. If you know, I mean, that piece is very strong. The one that I circulate is a very strong piece. I have another bowl I'm doing that is very strong. Very, you know, it's not that thick, but it's a very strong wood. And I haven't experimented with anything where you could actually knock through the wood, but I'm sure you can turn pieces. Particularly if you have defects in the wood, you could be knocking pieces out and that kind of thing. On the other hand, that may be just part of what the finish is that you want to do.
You don't make it real thin.
No, you can, though. I mean, I don't know that you can't make it. The ones I've made have not been. I've not made thin pieces and then used the hammering technique on them. But I don't see, particularly where you have something that's fragile with either some bark occlusion in it or some sort of weak area or punky area, you might still be able to use that technique over it and tear it up.
If you hammer it, which still has a tenon on it, and then put it back on the lathe and
A-
thin it from the inside.
Absolutely. You can not only thin it from the inside afterward, you can also cut up against your hammered surface. So you can, you can on the lathe, you can cut a finer demarcation between the hammered portion and a part that you want to have smooth. Now on this piece, around the lip itself, I didn't hammer it, but I didn't sand the lip much either afterward. In other words, it's not really well defined there. It's sort of, the hammering technique goes right up to the lip and stops. But I didn't cut a fine margin there. But obviously you could cut that later to get a smooth margin if that's what you wanted in your design.
How long did it take to hammer that one piece?
Oh, less than an hour. I'd say, and again, you're sitting in a chair. We were actually watching My Name is Earl on TV while I was doing it. So, that's a half an hour program. And I only did it during the commercials. So it really, My Name is Earl is one of John Jordan's favorite TV programs. That's why we watch it then. So, but yeah.
Have you tried the technique of hammering it and sanding it down flush and then steaming it, bringing it
No, but I've seen that, and that is described in one of the books I passed around. You understand what he's describing? That is, taking a piece of wood that's finished. Generally, you don't want one that's completely dry, but it would work either way. Then you hammer into it, making depressions into the wood. Then you sand the surface, and then raise the grain by putting on some sort of grain-raising finish or water, and then the parts that were hammered in will swell up, and those surface areas now will be above the smooth surface that you sanded. And that's an old technique. That I've never done it, but it's a described technique in these, and you can get some very unusual finishes that way. You can even do that just by scraping. In other words, you can take a piece and burnish part of it, which will push the grain down in the area you burnish. Then sand the rest of it down to that area, and then raise the grain, and it'll raise up, and you can get a cove or whatever you want over the area that you burnish. So it's definitely an interesting technique. You can make all sorts of different surfaces like that. Any other questions on the hammering? I tried hammering just using a burnisher, just a round burnisher like on a chisel end piece, and it really didn't have good effect. I did it by fastening down a piece on the lathe and trying to keep it from moving and the like, but I didn't find it would be satisfactory. A, it would take too long, and second, I had trouble keeping it in place, and it made a lot of skid marks and all that stuff. So, yeah, I couldn't watch TV at the same time. But, yeah, I'm sorry, yes. No. It's all done, and I'm holding it in my hand and just bouncing the machine up and down until the commercial's over. No, no. And that's a point. You know, Sorby came out with some of these texturing tools that are wheels. The wheels are actually cutters, and the wheel rotates, you know, as your turning rotates. So you get the grooves on, and we had someone bring in a box last, didn't we? Or what? I'm thinking of a different club. Yeah, I'm sorry, the Fort Lauderdale Club. Someone brought in a turn box with a spiral side that was actually cut into it by the wheel, the Sorby wheel, as it grinds. Have people seen the Sorby wheel I'm talking about? It's a pretty expensive tool. It comes with 3 or 4 different cutters, but generally all it is a wheel that you're going to cant on an angle. So as the piece is turning, it's going to make the cutter turn, and you're going to be able to scroll down. So it makes a sort of a ornamental lathe kind of finish on just a piece, and it sort of pushes the cutter along. Other questions on this kind of technique? I need some way to protect the floor here from the next technique. Yeah, let's move everything off, other than the Drano. Yeah. All right. We now have a magic trick for you, okay? First of all, I recommend that you wear gloves. I recommend that you wear gloves and eye protection and an apron. I didn't have an apron. I have an apron, but I didn't bring it. These are my magic glasses, which are reading glasses on top, so I can see things like in this range, and then magnifiers on the bottom, so I can see things real close. And these were expensive, but you can buy just a regular pair of reading glasses and add the stick-on bifocal lenses to them if you want, and that'll make them magnifiers. So that's what these are. So I can't see any of you at all when I have the glasses on, but I can see within working distance on the lathe with these, and it works pretty well. And if I need to look up close to something like actually reading the directions, yes. You think that's enough? Why don't you get me some more? That's that's not going to be enough. This is Drano. This is water, by the way. It's water, okay? All right, and it says read the entire label, okay? All right, never cover the drain, keeps hands and face away from the drain. Yeah, in fact, that's all that's in it, as a matter of fact. But it contains no phosphorus, which means it won't flame up, okay? Yeah, you can use a match on this. All right. Okay, now, what you do, first of all, is, and by the way, this is a piece of mahogany, or, you know, and it, as I said, it has this saddle-shaped thing around it that we're talking about having textured, and Al's going to bring it in so you guys can see it. But this is a pretty nice piece, and you almost hate to do anything with it. On the other hand, it had a little defect here from a graft of some kind, probably a prune. The tree was either pruned. It looks like it's sharply cut instead of being just broken. And this is the piece we're going to work on. And we're going to try not to get any dye on the shirt, although I can always buy another one, right? If something happens to this shirt, these are for sale in the back of the room, and they're a bargain, absolutely a bargain. No, it's not a new shirt, but it looks like an old shirt. Yeah. Well, it may need some surface treatment. Anyway, okay. So what I'm going to do first is add the lye to the water. Does that make sense? All right, but that's the rule. Does anybody have any questions about that? You don't add water to lye, and you don't add water to acid. I know, but you still don't add you don't add water to it because the reaction is too fast. The goal here is to put some lye in the water and then stir it up. I don't know how much to put in. Put in plenty. Is that enough? Put more? All right. This, by the way, is very inexpensive. What? No. All right. Yeah, and I'm going to stir this up. I've got something to stir it with. Oh, I know what.
Yeah, one of those 2x4.
Yeah, I've got my 2x4 project. This is as far as I got with the 2x4 project. But this may, this may give you a hint of what it will do to the mahogany, but I'm not sure. You think I need more lye than this? I don't know. Looks like it's turning the 2x4 green, but I don't know. Maybe that's just, there may be a dye in the Drano. How's that sound? Because it had the granules were green. All right. So you stir that up, and you all know that you can do a survey of people. You can ask like 10 voters that just came out of the voting booth out of 500, and you can get a sample of what the result's going to be. And you can do the same with tea to taste it to see if there's enough sugar in it. You don't have to drink the whole thing. And here, if you want to check to see how much lye is in it and it's the right amount, you can taste it if you want to, but I don't think that's a good idea. All right, now, I've done this before, right? Of course, of course. This piece, by the way, has been in Al's shop for a year, at least a year, waiting for this moment. And what? Okay. I'm not sure why it works with lye, so I can't even tell you why it works with ammonia. But yes, it's supposed to change color. What color? Well, when I do it, it turns red. Okay. I can always do that if it doesn't work enough. Okay. But does anyone else have another piece they want to do this to while I'm here? I'm going to end up with, I already got 2 quarts of this. No, you can't pour this back in the jar. This I'm going to pour down the drain to clean out the drain. All right? Does anybody, let's put this, does anybody have an opinion as to what's going to happen? Does anybody have an opinion or guess as to what's going to happen? All right, I want to poll. How many people think it's going to turn black? How many people think?
The water's going to evaporate before you get it in.
All right. How many people think it's going to turn green? Green. Purple. Any other votes? Okay. All right. Okay. Here's what it's going to do. All right. Of course. All right. It's not doing anything. Think I need more lye? You think it'll still work if I put more in?
The water's turning brown.
That just washed the dust off from the last year. That's all it did. Okay, that's obviously not good enough. I've got... Well, what? Has anybody ever done this before? Okay. I've done it before. Okay. But I did it before one time and actually sold the piece that I made. So, it's sort of like, somebody liked it. I'm not sure why, but, we don't always know.
So it wasn't money down the drain.
It wasn't money down the drain, yeah. Oh, Jesus. All right. All right. Obviously, you guys, last month I had you watch paint dry, right? This, we're... got a little more color to it, right? I don't know. I'm going to keep doing it until, Well, that's another thing. Should I? Yeah. Yeah, I know. The water is taking on some of the mahogany dye that's in it. You can sell it. I am intending to pour the water down the drain or on the. They do? Yeah. I'll pour it outside on the gravel somewhere. All right. I don't know. How long do you think it'll take? Should I leave it in longer?
I would leave it in while we have a break.
Oh, you would? Okay. No. I did it before. It turned very, very red. Much redder. Mahogany. It only works on, it has a different effect on different woods. You saw the effect on pine, right? Almost instantly. Almost instantly.
Did you put more Drano in the first time?
I'm not sure. I know I didn't put a lot of Drano in it, okay? But I know the wood was wet. And that's the only thing I'm thinking is that, it may have been easier to get the water and Drano mixing. All right, that's what I'm going to do. John?
Leave it in there. Let's be surprised when you take it out.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It's going to be weighted down with a piece of pine. That's not good enough. Maybe I can put a piece of the Drano can on top of it. Here, will someone hold this down during the break? It's not a bad demo, is it? No, it isn't. I mean, guys, it really has marked part of the grain. It really has, and you know what it looked like before. I should have passed it around first, right? Yeah, we'll leave it so. Okay. All right. Take a break. Vinegar?
Or baking soda.
All right. No, what I think I'll do... What? What I think I'll do is I'll bring it into the kitchen area here and rinse it off. Okay? And I'll do that as well with my gloves, so I can rinse my gloves off. But that's essentially the process. I got one of my books back. I'd like the other two. You can keep passing them around, everybody sees them, but I would like them back. I know Bob wants his book back. Didn't you intend to get that back? Okay, all right, okay. If there are any other questions or any other suggestions about way to do surface treatment, just simply announce that by raising your hand and saying, I'll do a demonstration concerning how you, and then tell us what that technique is that you want to show us, okay? Anything else? Thank you very much. That's it. All right. Herb, are you going to run the instant gallery now? Yes.